Today we are going to learn about benchmark fractions and how to use them to compare other fractions. Let's start talking about what a benchmark fraction is. A benchmark fraction is a known fraction commonly used for estimating. Some common benchmark fractions are 1/4, 1/3, 1/2, and the whole number 1. Let's use benchmark fractions to work on an example. I need 5/6 cups of water to make pancakes and 3/8 cups of water to make muffins. Which recipe needs more water? So we're going to use a benchmark fraction to compare 5/6 with 3/8. And we're going to use the benchmark for 1/2. Here we have area models that show the fraction 1/2. And other area models split up into 6 and 8. So for the pancakes, we're going to compare 1/2 and 5/6. I'm going to color in 5/6 of my model. And doing so, I can see that 5/6 is greater than 1/2. With this model for the muffins, I'm going to color in 3/8. And I can see that 3/8 is less than my area model for 1/2. So I can say that 5/6 is greater than 1/2. 3/8 is less than 1/2. If 5/6 is greater than 1/2 and 3/8 is less than 1/2, then my benchmark 1/2 tells me that 5/6 is greater than 3/8. Make this with a pen much easier to read. Let's look at some more examples. I want to compare 5/12 and 2/4. And I'm going to use 1/2 again as my benchmark. If I look at 5/12, I know that 6/12 is equal to 1/2. And if 6/12 is equal to 1/2, then what does that tell me about 5/12? It tells me that it's less than 1/2. If I plot this point on the number line, I know that 5/12 would be there, and 6/12 would be at 1/2. I also know that 2/4 is equal to 1/2, which tells me that 2/4 would be at that point. Seeing the 2 points and knowing that 5/12 is less than 1/2 and 2/4 is equal to 1/2, I know that 5/12 is less than 2/4. And I can explain that in a sentence using 1/2 as my benchmark. Why don't you try to compare 6/10 and 4/9 in your notebook? Pause the video and do that. Also remember that even though 9 is an odd number, you can still think of what two numbers half of 9 is between, and that will help you to determine if it's less than 1/2 or greater than 1/2. Pause the video and try to solve this writing a sentence on your own. So looking at the fraction 6/10, I know that it's greater than 1/2 because 5/10 is equal to 1/2, and 6/10 is a little bit larger than 5/10. I know that 4/9 is less than 1/2. And I know that half of 9 is actually 4.5. I can't write that as a fraction because I can't have a fraction in a fraction, but I do know that 4 is less than 4.5. So 4/9 is less than 1/2. If 6/10 is greater than 1/2 and 4/9 is less than 1/2, I know that 6/10 is greater than 4/9. And I would explain that by using 1/2 as my benchmark. Let's try 8/10 and 2/6 Please do the same thing in your notebook and write it as a sentence to explain which was larger using 1/2 as a benchmark. You should have that 8/10 is larger or greater than 2/6 because 8/10 is greater than 1/2 and 2/6 is less than 1/2. I know that 1/2, if I do it in tenths, it's 5/10. And if I do 1/2 equivalent to 6, I know it will be 3/6. And those are the benchmarks that help me. For the next problem in your notebook, write down all the fractions from this list that are less than 1/2. Pause the video while you do so. You should have 1/3, 3/7, and 4/12 circled. I know that 7 and 3 are odd numbers, but you know what would be half of that, and if it's more than, you know it's greater than half, and if the numerator is less than, you know it's less than half. 12ths, you know the numerator would be 6/12, that would equal 1/2, so 4/12 is less than. Now try this one. Write the fractions greater than 1/2. Pause the video and write these in your notebook. You should have 3/2, 6/10, and 7/8 circled. We know 4/8 is equal to 1/2, 5/10 is equal to 1/2, and 3/2 is actually over 1/2, so it's definitely greater than 1/2. Now try these in your notebook on your own and write down how you know which is larger using a benchmark. These are your answers. 2/3 is greater than 1/2 because half of 3 is 1.5 and 2 is larger than that. 6/5 is larger because 6/5 is actually larger than 1/2, so it's definitely larger than 3/4. And 4/9 is less than 5/10 because 5/10 is equal to 1/2. And 4/9 is less than 1/2 because half of 9 is 4.5.